It's green. Can you hear me all right? All right. Well, I said I was 2. I said 2 because now I can put the real number in front of that, which is 82. So in 2 weeks, I get to be 82. And it's always a challenge every year as you figure out new ways to be able to do things. Because remember, if I'm 82, I never had technology except for a phone with an operator on the other end. So I didn't have to do much but to pick up the phone and say, hello, I want to speak to Mary. And she'd say, well, I'm sorry, you can't talk right now because there's another person on the line. So I'm always very aware of my technology, make sure everything works, because I'm not, it's interesting, it takes me a while to be an advanced expert at any of this stuff, because I am always going back to my phone and saying, oh my goodness, which has an interesting learning experience for me. It's what happens sometimes when you're still uncomfortable with something. And if you're uncomfortable with something, you either let it overcome you or you learn how to use it. And that's what I want to share with you today. Every year is a learning experience. Every day is a learning experience. And my goal for you is that even though you may have heard some of the things that I've said before, that you take it in a different way, that you hear it differently, or it now fits differently because of who you are and where you are in your career. Maybe it didn't matter a few years ago when you were in a different place, but now it does. So it is my intention to reground us in some facts. I think in nursing we sometimes overlook some of our facts. I want to be very clear with you, we do not need to reinvent nursing. Nursing was invented a long time ago, and I want to talk you through why we have to be careful with our language. We're always trying to reinvent ourselves. And I'm going to help you differentiate where that's important to do and where that is not. Okay? So with that, I also want you to know that this is a learning experience, so therefore there will be participation. All right? That's the expectation. So let's start off by even looking at the words. And by the way, I use a lavalier mic because I don't stand still. And I actually, if I need more engagement, I will come get you. So if those of you in the back of the room think you're hiding, you're not. Because I do have feet and I can get my steps in. All right? So I want to talk about making the power and beauty of nursing visible today, because I want to differentiate between nurses, like the people, being visible, and the work of nursing. I think nurses are very visible. We're all over the place. We're physically visible. But I don't believe that our work is visible, and I want to walk you through that so that you understand that there are powerful ways in which we can begin to demonstrate the power and beauty of our work by making it more visible. Okay? So let me make something very clear. We're talking about empowerment and transformation. We are already empowered. We need to just get over this conversation about how we become more empowered. We were empowered the day we signed up to be in a profession. We have been empowered by society to say, you get to be a powerful decision maker as long as you cross your heart and hope to die that you will not hurt me. That's what we said. And so we're already empowered. We already have a wide decision-making authority. The question is, do we own it? Do we use it? And where do we use it? And part of my conversation today with you has to be recognizing, where are you tethered? Where do you use your authority? Where do you use that power to transform care? Because we're not all in the same place at the same time. So it's important for us to understand that one of the key issues that I see happening in nursing is that we have too much variation with the message. If you were to ask 50 different people what is nursing, you'd get 50 different answers. Oh, did I just hear something? Oh, okay. So I want to talk about singing our song. one of the things I'm going to give to you at the end is a gift. I recorded a video, a film, called Sing Your Song. And it's my story about where I got to learn to sing the song of nursing and what it really means for the profession. I'm also going to leave you with a video that actually, complimentary video, it's my gift for Nurses Week, that I created, which you can use everywhere and anywhere you want, as long as you make sure that you credit and do things properly. Use it with your students, use it with your colleagues, and it is the story of professional practice. So, and along with some references. So you'll have that at the end. They're all links. You can do your magic with your phones. I don't know how you do that, but anyway, it's there for you. So we do not sing the song of nursing well. So let me give you the analogy to frame what we're going to be talking about today. Everybody in this room, and I'm assuming even someone from Poland or Australia, knows that the Star-Spangled Banner is the national anthem for the United States, right? And I guarantee you that if I asked us to stand up and sing the song right now, that some of you would be trying to find somebody that you actually knew the words. You'd be kind of cozying up to that person who was singing the words to the song, and then you would lip sync, because you don't really know the words to the song. Likelihood you'll get through the first verse fairly well, but you'll never get through verse 2, verse 3, and verse 4. You know, there's a whole bunch of verses and none of us have ever heard of. So the point being that if you don't know the words to a song, you can't sing it. So what do? You hum. You hum the song and the tune. And so what do we do in nursing when you don't know the words to the nursing song? We do a lot of humming, which means we do not truly articulate what nursing is and the value of nursing. We need to learn to use the words that truly help us show the power and beauty, which is, in fact, that we have been authorized by society to make decisions. And for me, it was important in my early work in the 60s, some of you weren't born yet, but in the 60s, to codify that in the California Nursing Practice Act. So that's when in California history, we created a brand new Practice Act, statutory law changes to truly identify and clarify and describe the powerful decision-making role that registered nurses play in healthcare. So for any of you who'd like to see a classic, even if you're not from California, a classic scope of practice, go there, because that Practice Act was then used throughout the country as a model for how to make sure that the language was right. Okay? So if we learn the words to the song, then we know how to sing it better, and the louder we sing it and the more confident we are singing it, then we will, in fact, achieve the goal, which is to make nursing visible. And that's part of what we have to do today. So I'm going to reground you in some things, I'm going to add some new things, and then I want to tether to you, where are you going to use your power and how? Because we don't all do the same work. But all the work we do is in the service of nursing and patient care. So professional role identity becomes a very important concept. Professional role identity formation becomes a very important concept, and they are different. Professional identity, and I'll talk a little bit about this, and professional role identity are together. You can't have one without the other. And I want to ground you a little bit more on that, because there's a lot of talk about professional identity right now, and theoretically it is not clear using the word professional identity. Yes, theory. If you are going to be in a profession, you need to use theory. It is not a bad word. We must be theoretically grounded, because if we're not theoretically grounded, we can't test our practice, and if we can't test our practice, then we shoot from the hip. We cannot shoot from the hip. We have to understand the origin and the basis of why we do what we do. That takes a theoretical framework. So we have to shift our thinking away from theory as only from those foo-foo talkers in the ivory towers. I am a Taurus, I am a practical, I know how to take theory, and I know how to implement it at the bedside. You need to learn how to do that. So I need to help you see the difference when we use words like professional identity and leave the word role out, because it doesn't meet the standard and the principles of the original concept of a professional identity. And that's important right now because we are in the stages of a whole new transition of students who don't think like half of us in this room. There's a whole generation of students who are looking for different things. They didn't come into nursing for the kinds of things that some of us came into. We have to acknowledge that and use that. And we have to understand that professional role identity is crucial to students to know where they stand and why they're doing what they're doing. And do they love what they're doing? That's the other thing. You got to love. There's no way you can get through a day in nursing and not love your work, because it is really hard and it is very interpersonal. Another issue is you cannot be a nurse and not like people. We are an interpersonal profession. There is no way, even if you're not at the clinical site in the bedside, you are still in an interpersonal interaction. And when we're mute or we cannot articulate, we do not use that interpersonal treasure of a relationship to the best that we can use it. So those are some of the key things I want you to think about as we go through today. Now, I want to share with you, this is one of my favorite cartoons. The quarterback yells 1482, 16, 31, 19, and the end says bingo. We need to be on the same page. Okay? And I want to share some core principles. A colleague of mine, anybody from UCLA? Anybody associated with UCLA? So I was at UCLA for a number of years actually doing this work. And Raquel came up to me. It's a lovely, lovely person. She was in one of my courses. And she said, I did something for you. I said, what'd you do for me? And she handed me this book. She said, I wrote down all your Maria-isms. First of all, I didn't even know I had them. And she brought that to my awareness. And so she gave me this book, and it's been a treasure. And every once in a while, I pull out a few of them that I think are meaningful to an audience. And these are the ones I pulled out for today. Learning without behavior change is irrelevant. My expectation is that if you don't learn from me today, that's your problem. I'm willing to teach and create, but if you're not listening, you need to own the fact that you're not the learner, even though I'm trying to help you be one. Okay? So my expectation is when you leave this next 3 days, you're going to practice differently. You're going to take something from here and actually go do something that's different, to engage differently, to make nursing better, to do whatever has to be done to make nursing visible and powerful. Secondly, the only behavior you can change is your own. How many of you are parents? Do you ever try to change your kids? That ain't going to happen. Okay? Your children, they have to own their own behavior and be accountable for their own behavior. That's my expectation. I can't hold you accountable. I can hold myself accountable. I can say, I'm not doing a very good learning experience, and therefore I have to change my behavior. That's ownership. That's accountability. The third one is you can't hold anybody else's, you can only hold yourself accountable. So we have to look at our language. I'm going to hold so-and-so accountable. No, I'm going to hold myself accountable, and I'm going to go to that person, and I'm going to say, you just broke the standard of practice. I need to help you understand that that's not okay. And that person needs to hold themselves accountable and say, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that. And then they say, okay, I'm going to change my behavior. Or they say, no. Who are you to tell me what I'm supposed to do? And then the answer is, I'm going to hold myself accountable and explain to them that I cannot be an enabler, that I cannot allow them to continue to break the standard of practice, because then I wouldn't be holding myself accountable. And that if you break the standard of practice and I don't do something about it and the patient is harmed, we both go to court. We both go to court because I didn't stop it. So accountability is an individual ownership issue. And it's a professional obligation. If you are in a profession, you have a legal, a moral, and an ethical obligation to stop, do no harm. You have to stop it. If you see it, you have to call it, and you have to do something about it. If you do not, you are legally, morally, and ethically responsible. And you can't change outcomes until you change practice, and you can't change practice until you know what to do when you show up. If you do not understand your role, okay? If your role is, so if I didn't understand my role as a mother, what would happen with my children? There would be confusion. I was very clear about my role as a mother. I had my theory about motherhood. I had my theory about parenting. And I did what I did, and I did the best I can. Good news, I have 2 wonderful daughters, and I'm very proud of them. Neither one of them are a nurse, so I was, for a long time, for a whole decade, I was told I was a bad nurse because I didn't have daughters who were nurses, and the answer is they did not want to be a nurse, and they faint at any conversation related to body fluids or anything that smells like a hospital. So, sorry, 2 daughters, very successful, very professional, doing their own thing. So, when I figured out that role clarity was important, it wasn't in nursing. I am a Southern Italian Sicilian with a Neapolitan back from my father, but I was really raised in my mother's culture. And if you didn't understand your role in the family, that was not good. Because in those days, you always stood this far away from your father. Oh, so I cheered about New York because I'm an East Coaster originally, but I'm actually a Bostonian, so every once in a while you'll hear words sort of float out that sound very Bostonian. Father is one of them. And because in those days you needed to know your place. You needed to know where you stood in the hierarchy. And despite the fact in the Southern Sicilian culture, women actually run. We are the matriarchs, actually run the system. The men think they do, but unfortunately, guys, not in Sicilian. So I learned that concept quite early. And what I did learn was when I was at the kitchen table, my brother sat there, my father sat there, I sat here. I'm sorry, my brother and father were opposite, say. I was there, my mother and my sister were here. When my father said to me, "Pass me the salt." Now, you have to remember, the salt was right in front of him. I would have to pick up the salt and give it to my father. So then, the next day, my brother says to me, "Pass me the salt." Guess what? That was never going to happen. It was one thing, it was my father to tell me what to do. It was another thing to have my brother tell me what to do. So I said no, in which case I moved quickly to the left because I knew my father was not going to be happy with that conversation. And that is when I saw the inequality within the roles. So that's where my interest. So what I want you to think about is, where are your roots? Where were the first notions that you still hang on to today? You know, I will never forget that table experience, and it's never going to happen to me again. You have really core memories that framed your identity, who you are. And one of the things that emerged from that experience was justice. So justice is a core value for me because there was so much injustice in relationship to within internal family and in my day also within the community and with respect to the place of women in the world. So I want you to think about, where did you start your ideas about who you are and your value system, and then how did that then fit with nursing? And I'm going to talk about how it fit with nursing for me. I have been an advocate for justice in nursing since I can remember. It's in my bones. I would never not do that. But it didn't come from nursing. It came from being an advocate for myself in a family in which it was very difficult to be who you wanted to be. Okay? Everybody clear about that? Did everybody just figure out where that was for them? Raise your hand. Did you just get a glimmer of something in your past that popped up that said, ooh, God, forgot about that moment? Yeah, okay. So keep these principles in mind, and be clear that when we use the word empowered, don't use it like we're asking permission. We do not ask for permission with respect to the fact that we have been granted our powerful decision-making authority by society, by virtue of it a profession, which is why it's important for us to remember that the word professional is in front of nurse. We keep talking about nurses, 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 nurses. I mean, that's great. However, we cannot forget the word professional, because there's where our power starts, and then we bring it into nursing. Without being in a profession, we couldn't do what we do. Does that make sense to you? Okay. So if, in fact, you don't understand the tenets of a profession, the tenets of a profession say you will be self-directed, you will decision-making authority, and do no harm. If we give you that power, you will be science-driven. So for those of you who hate science, big problem in being in a profession. And you must be theory-grounded. You just can't wing it, because you have to test it. You have to do research. You have to find out whether you do the same thing over and over and over again is the correct way. Because you can do the same thing over and over and over again and do the wrong thing over and over and over again, which is why you need a way in which to communicate more effectively and transfer knowledge within the profession and have a monitoring system, peer review, to make sure you're on target. It's not a witch hunt. It's a way to make sure that we stay standards-driven and standards-based. And then you must, in fact, understand that the core of a profession is to introduce new learning everywhere you possibly can. What we do as a profession is that we introduce nursing knowledge. I can do this whole program without nurses. I can do it with pharmacists. I can do it with social workers and physical therapists, because this is about professional practice. And then we learn what professional practice is, and then we use it as the underpinning for our nursing work. So nurses are empowered by virtue of their professional work, not their nursing work. What empowers you in nursing and cements that professional authority is your scope of practice. So if you're not read your scope of practice, you need to go back home, got to read your scope of practice or read your regulations, and make sure that you understand where the words are in those documents that say, I am a decision maker who will do no harm, and I do it in nursing. Okay? So, So I wrote this in 1976, and history matters. And the reason I wrote it in 1976 is because that was the year that the actual new scope of practice for California actually got published in the legislature. And like with anything that's new, we needed to clarify. We needed to keep talking about it, make people sure they understood the words that were on that piece of paper. So I wrote this because I wanted to be very clear about the basis upon which nursing practice is built, which are the tenets of a profession. So if you want to use this, wherever you want to use it, please, I would be honored. And what I said was, as professionals, we are given powerful decision authority over the health and welfare of others based on a belief. They believe, society believes that we use a substantial amount of scientific knowledge and technical skill. You got to do the skills piece too. It's just not the only thing that you do. And it guides the practice. And we must uphold our commitment. We cannot be the fox in the hen house. We need somebody to oversee our standards of practice and how we honor those standards of practice. So how many of you work in a shared governance, leadership? Are you on governance council? Raise your hand. I want to see this. This is really important. Okay. So here's the truth, according to Maria O'Rourke. There is only one reason for professional governance, and that's so you won't hurt somebody. It's about control of practice. That is the genesis of the whole notion. I mean, there's thousands of articles out there around leadership councils, And we're losing sight of why you're supposed to be doing. We're so interested in the structure and the process that we forget the root. The root of governance, of practice in a profession is control. And we have to control our practice through standards. So we have to monitor and evaluate our practice to a set of standards. And then once we learn what's the right or the good or the potential practice that works, then we introduce that to new learning, and then we follow it. So be clear. The purpose of governance in a profession is control of practice. And that was a lost concept for many, many years because we get so tied up in the structures. You know, how do we build this thing, and who gets to go and who doesn't go and how many people go. And if you understand it's about control of practice, you should be running to that session. By the way, I don't talk about meetings. I talk about work sessions. You either go to a work session or you don't go. You're either going to produce an outcome or don't go. But don't go there just to sit and listen because it's a waste of time. That's why I don't like the word meetings, because it has a connotation that, oh, everybody gets to go and sit and have the coffee and chat and maybe do a little work, have an agenda. I'm saying you need dialogue. You take an issue and have dialogue. So I love this cartoon. To me, it's the difference between a role-driven, a task-driven, or a job-driven. I don't know what he's doing or why he's doing it, but by golly, I love his work ethic. We can do so much work over and over and over again and not getting us anywhere. Remember, we need to be able to show the power and beauty of nursing more visibly. We can't do it if we're doing that. So, nurses are pivotal in a pivotal position to transform care. We always have been. The question is, how do we do that? And I'm saying that through professional role, identity, and clarity, we can make the power and beauty of nursing more visible. And I want to show you and walk you through that. So we've made transformational changes. We've made some massive changes. We've done phenomenal work. We changed our structures. We added advanced nurses. That was 2 decades of work. And some of you haven't been through those decades, but you have to listen to those of us who had to roll up our sleeves and fight so hard to get advanced practice. How many of you are advanced practice nurses? You? Okay. We had to remove the stereotypical language that kept us in the dark as nurses, kept us task-based, and kept us assistants to the physician. It took us 3 decades to do that. So these words matter. But what has not changed is the definition of nursing. The definition of nursing by post-60s. It had to be by the 60s. Before that, there were sort of, I'm trying to be kind, say strange versions of nursing that did not fit with my professional role identity. So, but once we became truly enlightened as a profession, which came, does anybody remember Faye Abdullah? Okay, you got to go read Faye Abdullah. The woman was an amazing theorist and nurse, and she was the one who really illuminated the fact that we have an independent practice and a dependent practice. Yeah, we follow doctor's order. Yeah, we implement the medical treatment, but we also have independent nursing practice, which is what makes the patient, helps the patient recover or be able to advance in spite of the medical diagnosis. That's what nurses do. We get them out of bed. We get them home. We get them healthier. So it's important to think about, shouldn't's not the right word. I would like us to use language that doesn't make it seem like we're asking permission to be powerful in our role. I want us to use words that make it clear that we're clear. We know our song. And then the question is, where do we sing it? We sing it in a variety of different places. But what has changed, which is really wonderful, and the California Nursing Practice Act set the stage for this. It says in our Practice Act that you can work anywhere you want. Nurses tend to want to work in an acute care facility, but nurses can work everywhere. And we actually have language in the law that says, yeah, go do that. Okay? So the setting changes, but the practice of nursing doesn't change. Now, what else changes is the population. So if I'm in home care, my population isn't the same, or years ago it wasn't the same as it was at the hospital, but I can tell you right now from personal experience with both my brother and my husband who have been quite ill, and I have been the nurse, what's going on in the home is not what was going on in the home 20 years ago. They are acutely ill. My husband was acutely ill when he came home. And I had a nurse for 1 hour, 1 time a week. Guess who the rest of the time? Okay? So it is different. So our populations change, which means our competencies have to change. The role of the nurse doesn't change, but competencies do. Now, here's my classic story. So I'm a psych nurse. I have never, ever started an IV in my life. Does that make me not a nurse? No, that's not what defines me, because in psych, anybody in psych here? You do not try to start an IV on a paranoid schizophrenic. Trust me, this is not your work. You need a team of bullies. And I was told, well, you couldn't be a nurse if you don't know how to. What do you mean you don't know how to start an IV? I said, I don't need to, and I don't want to. It's not my work. Okay? But that doesn't not make me a nurse. So I want you to separate this whole notion as you don't know how to do certain skills, so that means you're not a nurse. The answer is no. In my population, I don't have to do that specific work. So think about, yes, the practice setting can change. Nursing does not. If you have a different patient population, you need different competencies. Community health nurses have different competencies than acute care nurses because of the patient population. So I really love these two guys. Somebody ought to invent a cap that keeps the sun out of your eyes. If you don't know the words to the song, you keep trying to rewrite it. We do not need to rewrite nursing. We need to learn the words and then talk about ourselves as we are professionals who happen to be nurses. We stand shoulder to shoulder with other professions, not because we're nurses. It's because we are all professionals who have decision-making authority, and we have what? Control over the practice of nursing. Use the words carefully. So, why do we transform care? Well, it's our professional obligation. How do you not transform care in order to ensure we do no harm? The whole purpose of transforming care is to make sure we're not doing any harm. I mean, we did practices years ago that ended up being harmful, like touching babies in the NICU. When the research came out later, when there were underlying underdeveloped neurological system, and you keep touching and touching and touching them, they're constantly stimulated. But nurses couldn't stop touching the babies. We have to know that sometimes we did practices that were not really okay, and own it. A lot of them in psych. We did a lot of things to psych people that, I mean, I had trouble with electric shock because we had to administer the medications to get them ready. And there was, at the time, there was some real question about whether or not it was working or not. And in my institution, it was the medical doctor and the psych, they were just shocking everybody. And the answer was, I don't think this is not right. This doesn't look right to me. And voicing my opinion at that time was less than pleasant. Because we were, and that was in the 60s. It was prior to my work on the Practice Act, which is one of the reasons I, in fact, joined the team to change the Practice Act, because we were not being listened to. So we are a driving force behind change because we're everywhere and anywhere, and we're there all the time. We have to use that power to truly help us understand that we could make even a more significant difference than we're making now. So why do we transform? Because it's our oath, because it's an obligation, it's a promise, and we have the numbers to make it different. But you can have all the numbers in the world and not have the power. Think about that. Think about our political system right now. Think about what's always going on in the world right now. Just because we have a lot of numbers doesn't mean we have the power. We have to have the ability to have the power through our numbers. So, one of the things I want us to focus on today is where do you use your power? So I'm going to present to you something that I designed early on in the 90s. And the reason I designed it, how many of you were actually practicing during the 90s? Okay, so you know what I mean when I say the suits came. The business world came in the 90s and tried to take over nursing. And I say nursing because I was involved. And one of the things that happened during that time is they wanted to shift nursing out of a profession into a task, technical workforce, because that's how they could get the cheap labor that they needed to cut the dollars from the patient care settings. It was the deprofessionalization of working. And I figured that out. Good news is I figured that out very soon. Now, history matters. So I was the chief nurse. I came to work one day. I was told by my CEO that they had brought in a company that was going to help us to reduce the cost of care. I was told by Mr. Anderson, who I will never forget. I doubt he will forget me either. Who said to me, by tomorrow, I want you to provide me with a $3 million cut in the budget. I said, okay, so dutifully went home, did my numbers, came back the next morning. He's sitting in my office in my chair with his feet on my desk. Oh. And I said, excuse me. We had a chat about that. But the essence of this interaction was that he said to me, well, where are the numbers? And I said, here it is. And he says, that's not what I told you to do. Now, I heard that tone of voice when I was 4 at the dinner table from my early experiences. So now I go, okay, red flag. And I said, I don't understand what you're saying. You asked for $3 million, here's $3 million. And she says, I told you, finger in hand, I told you to take it out of the nursing labor force. I said, that is not what you said. And we had a conversation about that. He said, so tomorrow I want it. And I said, no. And he went, no. And I said, no, I won't do that. It is not necessary. I gave you $3 million. We need the nurses. We have the right amount of staff for this patient. And I went, and I sang the song. And it was because I knew the words to the song that he did not have a response to me except to say, I told you to do it. Aha! That was the second red flag. 24 hours later, I was walked out the front door. Sometimes you have to lay in front of the bus. Sometimes it's that important because there was no way that I was ever going to lay off my nurses when I knew I didn't have excess. I had the right numbers, and I had done my homework, and I knew what the work was. So I want you to think about those times in your life when you have had to lay in front of the bus. But my hope is that prior to your laying in front of the bus, you sang your song. You have to know why you're going to lay in front of the bus. Otherwise, it's kind of futile. And those are the kinds of experiences we're going to have again because the suits are back. The suits are back. Yeah, we're back there. It didn't take but another decade for them to come back. And it's going to be worse this time. We have to be very clear that we have to be on our toes. We have to be able to articulate the value of the numbers of nurses and the kinds of nurses we require in order for us to have this, which is a clinical enterprise. In our world of nursing, in our world of healthcare, there's the only people who are important in a business, the only people who are important in a business are the people who make the product. Well, in healthcare, clinicians make the product of patient care. We sell patient care. We want high-quality patient care. We want sensitive patient care. We want patient-focused centered care. We want really all these things, but it's all about the product. Because if the person who's buying the product doesn't like the product, they're not going to come. And if they don't come, there is no money. And if there is no money, there is no business. Okay? So in my book, clinicians rule. They're at the top of the apex. How many of you are clinicians in the room? Direct line, inpatient, hands-on. Raise your hand. Be proud. Let me see you. You are the basis of the work. The rest of us can go home. You know, if we do not have a clinical enterprise where clinicians actually make a product, why do we need research? Why do we need education? Why do we need management? The rest of us can go home because there's no business. And yet, in our country, it's turned the other way. It's the apex is top management, senior management, who spread stuff down as opposed to bringing stuff up. So I built this because I wanted, and this is what I've been teaching for years, and it says a clinical practice model, and there's some confusion, and you'll hear more about this when Dr. Stanley talks. Organizational competence is the service and academic setting. If you are in an organization, it doesn't matter whether you're in service or academia, you have to understand the structure of your organization so that whatever you do, in the case of academia, producing graduates who actually can do the work. If you're in management, you need to create the environment in which the clinicians who work there can actually do the work. If you are in performance, quality, how many people in quality? One. A few of you in quality. Okay. You set the standard for it. You show us how to monitor and measure. You give us the tools that we need to make sure we're teaching to the standard, managing to the standard, and performing to the standard. But the bottom two are there to support who? The clinicians who make the product. So I'm going to stop for a second, and I want to ask, where do you fit? So, Robin, you said you came out of quality. What does this have to do with you? Talk to me. And I know you are eloquent, so I'm going to offer you the opportunity to show your eloquence to everybody else. Up. There you go. Role model.
I made it my point to be a part of quality. And anyone can do that, of course. You can pursue that, pursue qualifications, be part of advisory boards, quality committees. It's really important. Shared governance is really important as well. So everything she's saying is gold. But what you need to really know is if you're not paying attention to those leaders that are part of quality, and you just feel that they'll make the right decisions for you, then you'll be put into a position where you're not happy with those decisions, and then there's nothing you can do about it. So whether you're part of quality or not, be a part of the answer, be a part of the solution by getting involved.
Is she beautiful? All right. So think of where you fit because you use your power differently. I do not do direct patient care anymore. I use my power in helping others understand the role of nursing and how nursing works so they can be more articulate, so they can and truly engage in a beautiful nursing practice, which should be bringing joy. The work of nursing brings joy. The work environment does not always bring joy. Different. Do not confuse the work of nursing with where you work. They are different. If you don't like where you work, you need to change the environment or find a place that you like to work. But never lose the joy of nursing. So there's too much variation, as I mentioned. The 90s was a horrible time for us. We got back on our feet. The suits are back. And the good, the bad, and the ugly is that if we cannot articulate who we are and sing the song well, we will be back in the same place again that we were pre-60s. This is not a good time for us. And it is not a good time because despite the wonderful influence and impact of men in nursing, we are still a predominantly female occupation, and we are under assault right now as women. So this is going to have a different twist this time. If you sing the song well, it doesn't matter where you work or what kind of work you do. If you're a manager or an educator or a clinician or a consultant or an academic, you have to learn to sing the song. Does that make sense to you? It doesn't matter where you work. This is not about clinicians. We have to sing the song of working irrespective of where we are. And we have to stop saying things like, well, if you really don't work at the bedside, you're not really a nurse. That is not true. We have to stop that. It's different work. It's a different application of nursing. And clinicians rule. So we need to lift that up while we do our work to do that. So first of all, the first verse of the song in nursing is you're professionals. The second verse is that you're an RN. And the third verse is that you have a job in which you do professional nursing. Okay? And I developed this model many, many years ago because I tried to take the sociology book and narrow it down to one page. So here's Sociology 101. Nursing did not invent professions. The professions were articulated, invented by Socrates many, many years ago. But it was the sociology people who actually created the opportunity for us to understand the professions. And it basically puts into a graphic what I've already said to you. We're decision makers, we use science and theory, we transfer knowledge, and we introduce learning into those that we serve. Bottom line, there's the picture. And there are clear definitions. So I put these in here so that, I don't know, I think we're going to be posting the PowerPoint. We'll figure that out. But this is available. And for those of you, Tarek, are we going to have access to the PowerPoints?
All the presentations will be between 3 weeks to 4 weeks.
Fantastic. Okay. So you get to see it. I mean, take pictures if you want, but you're going to get to see it.
We don't really share presentation with anyone.
Oh.
You can reach out to me.
Oh, you can reach out to me.
Some copyrights. So
Yes, got it. No worries, because at the end, you can take a picture where I say you can access all that free stuff anyway. Okay?
the presentation will be in our media library. Give it about 2 weeks to 4 weeks, and everything is going to be online.
Okay, you can access it. All right, so these are the definitions, very, very clear. This is what Dr. Pam Stanley and I are going to be embedding into her new curriculum, which she will be sharing with you. And you have to love you'll have to love professionalism. You got to like being in a profession. And we have right now, AACN has created a new document that underscores professionalism, but I want to bring up one key point about it. It talks about professional identity. I'm a little concerned about that. It doesn't talk about professional role identity, which is only half of the equation. I've already shared with you that we didn't invent professional identity. It was invented a long, long time ago. But it is, in fact, was reintroduced in 1910 Flexner was concerned that we weren't seeing, not we as nurses, but the professions were not being seen as the true value that they are, so he reintroduced it. But he basically said, just because you have this idea of who you are, you need to tether it to where you're going to put that. So you have to have a structure, and our structure is the professions. So justice for me is a very important concept in the professions, because the professions about doing justice to do no harm. They all work together. So you can't act and feel like a nurse until you embrace acting and feeling like a professional. That is bottom line for me, and I will argue with anybody and anything around this statement, because we keep talking about acting and thinking like a nurse, and in people's mind, the nurse can be a technician. We have to keep the word professional out there. So the center is the profession, and everything around, in case you don't know, at least in the United States, apricot is the color for nursing, not my favorite color, but everything around it is the ANA standards and all the standards of practice and the social policy statement. We already have the words to the song. You just have to read them. And the question is that what you signed up for? Because that's what academia has to deal with. We have to make sure that they understood what they signed up for, so we only graduate people who signed on, who aren't going to go out there and make it whatever they think it is. And that will be a challenge. And so that is where your job goes. And if you don't like your job and you don't like your work environment, don't not like the joy of nursing and professionalism, change your job. Now, I don't say that out loud when there's too many CNOs, because they go, oh, you're going to make my staff leave. He says, well, no, then clean up your environment. Make them want to stay. So if you see nursing as a job, everything I just said doesn't matter to you. Hopefully it does. And the most recent verse is, I wrote an essay, which is available, called Thinking Out Loud. You cannot think out loud if you don't know the words to the song. Thinking out loud means that no matter where I am, no matter with whom I am interacting, I know the words to the song. And I can talk it. It doesn't stay behind my eyeballs. I have to have it verbally be able to come out my lips so that somebody can hear it. And the most important place, and the reason I wrote this essay is because I was very angry. I'll be done in a minute. Is that I never heard a nurse talk her thinking process to me the entire time that my husband was in the hospital. And I had to ask, and I was told I was an uppity nurse. I was told that my comments were not necessary. And the answer was, we are going to have a different conversation. So be clear. Sometimes it takes a personal experience to understand what's really going on the other side. And so my husband, in a clever way, said they wouldn't let me in the room. Now, my husband's hard of hearing, and it's not volume, so screaming at him doesn't help. It's a clarity issue. And he does not want to know his medical history. He just doesn't want to know it. He depends on me. That's something we decided a long time ago. So he said to the nurse who said, well, give me the information. He says, well, if you really want correct information, you better call my wife. And she's out in the waiting room. Well, 2 minutes later, I was there. So just be clear that sometimes you've got to get riled up before you write something. And thinking out loud means that you can, in fact, actually walk your patient through in an interpersonal interaction what you were doing, why you were doing it, why you're not doing something, and how that's going to help. That's the holy grail of nursing. So with that, I included all the areas in which my work has been impactful. Transition to practice, workplace violence, family interaction, governance, strategic work, and so on. Because this is 50 years of, oh God, no, it's another. I think it's 60 years of work. And all of these things are important. I hope that you are going to take something away. I want you to think of all of these beautiful presentations that are going to happen today and tomorrow and Friday. They all have a place. You can take the patient care model and actually organize all these presentations from where you're tethered and see the power of where we are. The power of numbers is not helpful if we do not have the power of our authority. Okay? So with that, I want to say thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful 3 days. And here is, these are references. Oh, what happened to my?
Dr. O'Rourke?
Yes, dear.
Still have 10 minutes and take some questions.
Yes.
Okay.
How many?
Well, no.
We got time? Okay. Oh, yes, right. We started 5 minutes. Oh, you gave me 5 minutes. So here are the links. The video, Sing Our Song, is on a YouTube. There's a keynote address that I did at UCLA, which talks about the theoretical work grounding nursing. I helped them build their professional practice model, and it's a great way to show how, if you're on the magnet journey, or if you're not on the magnet journey, that you need a professional practice model that fits into the patient care model. You know, you can have a patient care model that's technical. That's not going to help. So, and then there's access to my institute, and then you can reach out to me, okay? All right, thoughts? So what? What did you learn, and what do you care about? Who cares? Yes?
My students.
Your students are going to care.
I care about them, and I want them to care. Oh, thanks.
So you can
Thanks,
bring
Ruth.
this back to your students.
Yes, I want to share with my students, and I want them to be professional
Okay.
and to take that, and so that they can sing the song.
Yeah. Okay. So be very careful. We had a time in the 90s where if I said I was a professional, then somehow that was a diss to somebody who's technical. It is not a diss. It's a career choice. I chose to want the authority. You know, I could be a technician, but I didn't want to be that. That's not where I wanted to spend my time. But they're not bad. They're just different. Okay? Same thing with RNs and LVNs. We're different. One's not better than the other. They're career choices. Who else? What did you learn? You didn't learn anything. Okay. Talk to me. Yes.
So I think this is very timely. I work with nurse residents and fellows.
Oh.
And one of the questions I always have is, how do I bring that passion for nursing in my residents and fellows? And that accountability piece that you talked to us about, singing that song, it resonates. And I think there's a lot of things from here that I'm going to take it back to them. So we can build, we are building our future nursing workforce, and we want them to reflect all the things that we have worked to bring nursing to this level. And this is where we can give them these resources and help them get there.
Okay.
So thank you. I really appreciate your
You're
time.
welcome. Yeah, and I think the video might be an important teaching opportunity. Learning opportunity. Okay, come on. Yes, Susan.
First of all, thank you. This is truly a living legend.
Oh, God.
Amazing. I've been a nurse 43 years, and every time I hear you, I go home like a new nurse.
Oh,
I feel refreshed, redirected, so thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
But what I love about what you're saying is don't wait for somebody to fix this for us.
No, right.
Take ownership right where you are. Be that voice that is the change. So you'll hear a little bit later from me today about personal accountability. And that's what it's all about. No one's going to step in and fix anything for us.
Right.
We have to take charge. We have
Right.
to own our profession. And we have to, it's a gift we're going to leave as a legacy to the next generations. And if we don't get it right, we're going to make a mess, and they're going to step into something really unfavorable.
Right.
So thank you so much.
Thanks, Susan.
You should, and I want to take you home with me.